it's almost like, am I confident enough that I can do this?
Mhm.
And it goes back to the same kind of lack of confidence, just, going into this full time. We're burning the boats. So like here we are now. And
It's either eat or starve, right?
it's eat or starve. It's either you're successful at this or nothing.
Welcome back to the podcast. If you guys are looking to ignite real estate investing, then join us on Investors Unite. I'm your host, Skyler, and on today's episode, I actually do have my new co-host, Maddie.
Yes.
Madison. She has joined us, and I would like to introduce a guest who I've become very close to over the past couple months here, actually. Yeah. Andrew Smith is his name. But just something brief to say about him is that he is in a situation where I feel like a lot of people will be able to relate to, especially if you're an agent, where he was doing the 9-to-5 grind for the past decade or so, right? But then also took up part-time real estate agent, right?
Yep.
So for about 3 years here, if I have that correct.
Yeah, it's
right?
Quickly approaching 4.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
So it was a balancing act, which is something that I really want to dive into, understand, what that looks like and the grind that really is. And then eventually transitioning full-time into an agent and kind of like what that has been like for you. So welcome. Thank you, sir.
Good to see you.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me.
Of course. So let's dive into your backstory a little bit. Did you grow up around here? What was kind of your ambitions as a kid?
Yeah. So I did grow up around here. So originally from Perry County. Not actually afraid to admit that. So,
a lot of people are.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Where in Perry?
So originally Elliotsburg.
Okay.
So like right near like where the high school is.
Yep.
For West Perry and all that. Sometimes I forget that there are actually like other high schools. Like there are other people outside that that exist. But so parents split whenever I was young. Went to live with with my mom, and she raised us. We went to Cumberland Valley School District right down the road here.
It's a big old school.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a
Was that a big
school.
difference from?
Yeah, it's quite.
I bet.
Yeah, quite. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was young, but it was definitely
I bet.
definitely quite the culture shock. But yeah, so no, just grew up around here. Ended up graduating from CV, and really ultimately I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do. I kind of bounced around from idea to idea to idea.
Sure.
But obviously knew I wanted to be successful, just like everybody does, right?
Yeah,
of course.
Plans never to get out of high school and be a failure.
Just be a bum the rest of your life,
exactly,
right?
Yeah, right.
That'd be the easy way out.
Yeah. Anyway, but got out and just honestly, I went to work right away. I worked a little bit in high school, ended up getting a job over at Value City Furniture in Mechanicsburg. Kind of got my start in sales there. And
Sure.
then really for the past 12 years, I've just been doing nothing but for the most part, it's really been sales or sales management. And
Yeah. So your 9-to-5 included all sales as well. Do you feel like that was, beneficial to you when transitioning into
real
becoming an
estate?
agent?
Oh, for sure. So and I've talked to people who have said, real estate, it's not really sales. And I think to a degree they're trying to get rid of what they feel is like a stigma in the industry.
gonna
That
say
you're
I still think sales
slimy.
is sales. It's still relationships and
Yeah.
Couldn't have said it better. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's true.
Sales is sales. You're still talking to people. You're still, trying to, kind of help move people towards making
Some
a
kind
decision,
of
right?
goal decision.
I agree. They just
Exactly.
don't want that stigma.
They don't want that stigma, but
yeah.
it doesn't have to be a bad thing,
I know when growing up, anytime one of those door-to-door salesmen would come, right? They'd knock on the door. Mom would be
don't
like,
answer the door.
exactly. I'd be like, don't answer the door. It's another salesman.
At one
It's like-
point, so whenever I was younger, so I would say probably before I was, well, honestly, even just like from 18 to 19 to 20, like I bounced around between so many different jobs. It was ridiculous. So 18 to 19, I worked at Value City. And then probably from 19, I would say, I think until maybe 21, I ended up so many different sales jobs. I sold DirecTV door to door, or no. I
Oh, so
sold
you were
Comcast.
door to door.
At one point, so I was Comcast door to door. I sold payment processors like from business to business.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Some B2B marketing.
oh
We'll
my
see.
goodness, I
You've seen it all.
so like DirecTV inside of like Costco's and Sam's Clubs and like wholesalers and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And I mean, had to do all sorts of stuff on the phone. Whenever I was actually 18, I got introduced to Amway, and I was with a team called URA that was a part of Amway. If you guys if you know Mark and Karen Ackley, who own Next Door Photos, Colby Jacobs has a massive team down in Hanover. Colby Jacobs, and I forget who his partner is, but
And they were all Amway.
we were all Amway, and so
I had no clue.
oh, I'm sure I'm sure there's probably a bunch of us that I just don't know about, but they ended up, kind of coming into this industry. And like whenever you hear people,
Judah Hoover started with Amway.
Judah Hoover started with Amway.
Yeah.
But
Good old MLM.
Exactly. All the books and stuff that he was talking about here. So we actually had a what's it called?
This might be a dumb question.
Yeah.
What the fuck is Amway?
I don't know. I just know it's an MLM. That's all I know.
So
or direct sales,
it's
as they would
direct
say.
sales.
So I've never heard
Direct
of this.
sales with the quote.
Right.
It's an MLM.
So I'm gonna play along and act like this is cool.
Yeah,
I'm
he's
just
like,
I have no idea what we're talking about.
Oh
Good
goodness.
question. Good question.
Thank you.
Because I actually don't know either.
So Amway's been around since I believe the 1950s. I want to say. For the most part, they were really kind of known for decades. They were known for cleaning products and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
But they ended up, so now they have, brands that, from all over the world. They're in so many different countries and stuff like that. And for me to try and explain kind of who they are, it's going to sound like I'm doing some sort of
It's like a pitch.
full-on pitch.
Yeah.
That's okay.
But so they have a bunch of products.
Yeah.
You can start a downline. I could give you all of these reasons that I remember for why it's not a pyramid scheme and this, hey, Federal Reserve, blah, blah, blah. But what that did for me, just especially whenever I was younger, was it did help me kind of create it just helped to enforce hey, start, kind of hitting your potential, start
Stepping
dream
outside
bigger.
the
Yeah,
box.
step outside the box.
The mindset that they taught you there, I bet, was huge.
It did so much for me. Just kind of form who I am even to this day.
Now, starting in sales when you were younger, obviously before we got to real estate or even your main 9 to 5 at that one point, was it nerve-wracking for you to start going door to door and pitching clients on these products? Or
for me, it was.
Or was
it wasn't great. Because it also wasn't great the areas that I got sent into. I feel like I got sent into certain areas that they're like, hey, this is gonna be funny. Let's send him in there. And so I'm the skinny kid in khaki shorts and a white polo, hey, are you unhappy with your internet service? You want to come back to Xfinity, and the amount of doors you get slammed in your face, honestly, but between Amway and all of this other sales, these other sales positions I had, I became bulletproof as a
rejection was just another day in the office.
100%.
Yeah.
It just
got you.
didn't faze me at a certain point.
I only asked that question because when talking to a lot of people, or I'll have a lot of friends I grew up with and shit, come over, talk to me, and be like, yo, how can I get started in real estate? I'm like, how do you feel about talking to people, strangers? And at first they're always yeah, that's fine. I'd be like, all right, I want you to go knock on 10 doors today. Go find 10 houses.
10 random people, and then they're like,
no, seriously, they just build up all these nerves behind it. I'm like, guys, this is part of the business. If you really want to, depending on what part of real estate you want to do, but a majority of the side, right?
Yeah, well, being an agent and stuff. Yeah,
definitely an agent.
Arguably the main thing is lead gen.
Yeah.
Because ultimately you don't have clients, you don't have a business, right?
Same thing for wholesales, flippers.
For anybody, really. Yeah. Just honestly, if you don't, sales, just business is people, you work with people, your clients and customers are people, no matter what, you have to work with people.
Right.
Getting some of that experience early on, and then you kind of take it and you're like, well, if I took all of those people, slamming doors in my face and what's the worst that they're going to say to me ultimately is no.
You could get a gun pulled on you, but nothing
go for
crazy.
no is the saying.
Oh boy. And we went for no multiple times a day, throughout the day. It was humbling. Cause you're wide eyed. You're like, all right, out of high school, the world is mine. I also have no idea what is going on. I have no idea about the real world, but I'm gonna figure something out. And then you're talking to now other adults, and they're like, I don't care
Yeah.
about anything you're saying right now. Leave me alone.
Right.
And so it's kind of brings you back down to earth a little bit for sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So after having those first couple sales jobs, did you know that, in the future, like I want to continue with sales? Like you realized you had some skills behind it, some kind of passion behind it?
So I had a passion for what I considered, and I had read it in a book, Cavett Robert. So he was a part of the Napoleon Hill Foundation, actually, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of like the books and stuff that you see, I believe like How to Win Friends and Influence People,
Well, that's
Yeah.
a good one.
like a lot of like those books that anybody and everybody will tell you to read if you're getting into any kind of sales.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff comes from the Napoleon Hill Foundation. And so I believe that's, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that is one of those books. But he had coined it like just human engineering
Mhm.
and getting people to, why do people make the decisions that they make? How do you get them to make different decisions?
Yeah.
And and obviously it's you can do it for evil, and manipulate people for the worse,
Right.
or you can do it to help them and help better their situation.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It brings
And
up a
it's
good point.
Yeah.
Do you think sales is manipulation at the end of the day?
I mean,
That's a tough question.
so if you're trying to get somebody to make a decision, I guess it'd be kind of textbook manipulation, but I think manipulation gets a bad rep too.
Oh, definitely.
Again,
But-
because there's ways that you can do it in people, for people's benefit,
Yeah.
in their favor.
Yeah, a way that I would definitely kind of change it is instead of manipulation, I would say like restructuring a perspective, right? So it's somebody typically going into any kind of sales, like a client, like they'll have this idea or this stigmatism behind the salesman of like, they just want me to get to here so they can make their money, right?
Right.
Where versus if you're actually able to kind of take them out of that mindset and show them like why this option's actually better for you, right? Whether it's going to save them money or it's just going to be a better service product, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Then it's just kind of them like realizing, I did have this stigma. Like, obviously, you're a
You
businessman.
still have an agenda
like, you want
behind it. Yeah.
Yeah.
right, but at the same time, they're understanding of like, okay, this might be a better option for me versus this guy's just trying to trick me into
If you're
buying
laying it all
something.
out and you
Yeah.
have their best interests at heart, then
Exactly. Yeah.
And if I'm giving you information that especially if I'm giving you new information that you didn't have before, or I'm helping you see this information, like you said, from a different perspective, in a different light, where, well, man, I didn't think about it like that, but now that you're kind of pointing that out, maybe I should make a different decision.
Right, just
or
opening
maybe
their
I should
eyes a
make
little bit more.
decision sooner. Yeah, exactly. No, I think honestly, I think sales skills, they transfer over in real life so well. I think everybody, I think there are some books that really everybody
Yeah.
should read.
No, seriously. Like,
Um,
not even if you're in sales, if you're just
just on how to interact with people. There's so many lessons that I've learned. I think it's also humbling. There's like you always hear people say like martial arts is great for like self-discipline and
Yeah.
it's good for your self-esteem. It's good for this. It's good for this. Your health and
right.
but sales is very much in a lot of ways kind of the same way. Don't get me wrong. It hurts your self-esteem
Oh, yeah.
in the beginning, but,
Yeah,
but
definitely humbling.
ultimately when you kind of bounce back from it, you start to be able to, kind of see things in a different light. And I
Mhm.
think it helps you empathize with other people. And I don't think that,
I agree.
having empathy for other
Yeah.
people is ever
No,
really a
it's-
bad
And
thing.
salespeople
not a
are
bad
always some of my favorite people. Like we're well
sure.
rounded, like easy to talk to.
Yeah. I like to think so.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what I tell myself. I'm like, we're easy to talk to.
Yeah. So
yeah.
now transitioning into real estate, what kind of piqued your interest there before you went ahead and got your license, all of that?
So whenever I was younger, I remember my mom driving us around, and it was something that she had kind of had an interest in. She'd never ended up pursuing it, at least to this day. There's still time, but
Maybe this podcast will
yeah,
help
exactly.
push you
Maybe
there.
this podcast will do it.
Come on, Mom.
Come on, Mom. But so she would drive us around, and I remember being in the car with one of my little sisters, and and she's going around and she's like peeking in like in through windows and
Yeah.
stuff like
Oh
that.
my
And
gosh.
I'm like, I remember thinking, man, like I really hope like nobody's home. But it was just, it was something that I just I don't know. I always thought
It was
was cool, and I think I'd be somewhat hard pressed to, to I guess speak on exactly what drew me to residential real estate. But whenever I would say I was probably 19 or so, I ended up getting a book. It was like How to Invest in Commercial Real Estate for Dummies. It
yeah.
was one of the For Dummies books,
Yep.
Yeah.
and I ended up, reading some of that, and I was like, man, this is. I was like, okay.
Can
I'm
make
like,
some money
okay,
with
this
this
makes
stuff.
sense. I was like, you can make some money.
Yeah.
I'm like, I get the concepts. I'm like, this doesn't seem like it's that hard. And so but I wanted to, be able to invest in commercial real estate. I still want to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I wanted to be able to also kind of be able to see things from, from the realtor's perspective. I wanted to, when I get into something, I get into it very, I want to know all aspects of
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
You become obsessed.
Exactly.
Mm.
And so I just, I was like, okay, well, let me get my real estate license.
How old were you
And
at this time?
whenever I ended up, so I first bought my classes online whenever I was, I think, 19.
Oh wow, you were young.
Did not
Mm.
end up going very far with them because I was like,
Okay.
wow, so this is just me reading literally everything. This sucks.
Yeah.
Reading and spitting it back out onto paper. It's freaking-
And that's, I mean, honestly, like whatever I paid for and downloaded, I'm like, there's no way that was actually like legit. I'm like, don't get me wrong, a lot of like I think I just like got the book or something like that, but I'm reading about like your bundle of rights and stuff like that, and it's just the very basic stuff, but there was no, like, it didn't track how many hours. Yeah, so I think more or less I downloaded these classes and stuff. I never went very far with them, but I'm like, okay, I could keep doing this, but I'm probably not going to have the kind of comprehension that I want.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I want to say I was, so this was back in 2019. I started my classes over at GHAR. I started my my real estate fundamentals, went through with that.
So in person.
In person.
Okay.
Yep. In person. Ended up leaving a job that gave me that kind of freedom to, still. So I was doing it on the weekends and stuff. And priorities just kind of ended up shifting whenever I left that job. And I was like, okay, well, now I got to focus on this other stuff.
Yeah.
Put real estate on the back burner. And then I think, so I picked it back up in 2021. Ended up going and finishing up my practice courses over at GHAR with Rick Zalek. And I ended up getting, finally completing it because it was something that like had kind of haunted me. I'm
For
like,
years, from you were like 19 until.
Yeah, I'm like, man, I finally did it.
Yeah,
and my mom thought it was like the coolest thing, and so I ended up getting that, and my parents, just lifestyle, they were going through some changes here at the time. They ended up selling their house, not with me. That's a
Ooh.
story for a different day.
Mom,
But
come on.
dude, that was
Ouch.
messed
Ouch,
up.
Mom.
She's like, I've known, so and so agent for so long. I'm like, I've known you my entire
You
life.
birthed me, Mom.
I came out of you. So no, that
my
was.
God.
I still have a little bit of resentment. If I'm being
That
honest.
could have been the first deal.
Family is
Yeah,
the
it was
worst
like,
clients,
I
though.
ended
So
up selling the house, and
Yeah.
it was a lot of money. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I was there when we were in trailers in Perry County. I'm like, so my parents are also very young.
Yeah.
My mom was, still in high school
When she had
whenever
you.
she had me.
Yeah.
And my dad had, started working a job that he's still at, to this day, and just, they were kind of like, okay, well, now we have a kid, and obviously priorities kind of shift a little bit, but
Of course, yeah.
I watched, and then obviously they ended up splitting, but I watched my parents work really, really, really hard. And I felt like every day that I was coming home, I'm like, man, I feel like I just keep hearing, somebody got a new promotion or something like that. And so, we end up going from trailer to house to, I think we were in Section 8 housing at the time. I could be wrong, but we ended up then going into a townhouse. And my stepdad was in the picture at this point. got a little rancher, then they got a bi-level, and then they built this house that, right over off of Wurtsville. And I'm like, it's like this massive house on
Yeah.
like 4 acres or something like that. And it was just, it was gorgeous. And that was, that was the dream home. I'm like, there was a little bit of, they had access to a pond and everything. And,
Oh, that's
I'm like,
awesome.
man, I got to see like the progression of this, and I got
Yeah.
to see
Yeah.
how, see them putting in just,
I think it
ridiculous hours.
I think it is awesome. I know that it can definitely be stressful on people, like having their children when they're younger, especially
Mhm.
high school, right? Because you don't know where your life's going yet.
Right.
But as a kid, like I was kind of the same situation as you. My mom was a couple years out of high school, not very long after
Yeah.
when she had me. So it's very cool watching, your parents grow up like with
Kind of
you.
while you're growing
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, because they don't
exactly.
know where they're at yet, right?
Right.
So it's like like you said, like same situation for me. It's just like bouncing around left and right, all these different jobs, like seeing their relationships, build and then crumble and build and crumble just
Yeah.
repeatedly. It's like, this is kind of
It's
cool.
just-
And
it's
like
life,
it's
yeah.
you can take life lessons from it.
You
Yeah,
can
for
learn
sure.
from their mistakes. Yeah.
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 Grow with them.
100%. And then, sometimes those same mistakes, what I realized though coming out too was I'm like, so I've learned from, from their mistakes because they're telling me about it. But while I've learned it and I know that it's not right, I still have to experience it
Yeah.
myself. I have to go through the growing pains or else it just doesn't stick quite as much.
It's true.
But
So-
yeah, I mean, I watched them work hard, and I came out of high school. I wasn't a great student. I focused on all the stupid shit, and then I came out of high school, and I was like, all right, man, like too many people have sacrificed too much for you to just keep squandering any kind of ability that you ever had. Like, is this it? Is this what you're gonna be?
Right.
Is this what those people like sacrificed for? Like, get your shit together.
Yeah.
Grow up.
No, that's true. I feel like this kind of ties in perfectly with being on the grind of having the 9 to 5 while also being a part-time agent, because
Yep.
it's a boatload of work. Like I know just from having my 9 to 5 and also being an investor for the past 3 years, like it's nonstop work from the time you wake up till like an hour before bed, depending on how late you stay up sometimes. Right?
Yeah, no doubt.
So do you think that, watching them have the work ethic that they do, they definitely like instilled it inside of you to kind of give the same momentum towards your life?
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
Take on that extra responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, once I got out of high school, like I look at like, 19, 20-year-olds and stuff now, and, like, or somebody like, and I'm like, man, I was not that sharp. Don't get me wrong. I'm like, I had these lofty ambitions. I'm like, but I didn't have it together like that.
I mean, you did something right.
I did. I eventually started
Starting in sales right outside of high school is
that
takes guts. It
is,
does.
so honestly, whenever I went into it, I didn't really want to spend money on college if I didn't know exactly what I was
Yeah.
going to do. And so
Agreed.
I was working at Giant when I was working in high school, and then the summer after high school. And then I walked across the street over to the Value City right over next to the Walmart here in Mechanicsburg. Went in, applied, thought that nobody was ever going to call me back. The sales manager, Anthony, was like, yeah, so yeah, we'll give you a call. I was like, well, I was just wondering, now that I turned this in, I'm like, is there anybody I could talk to? He's like, yeah, no, we'll give you a call. And walked away. And I was like, never going to hear back from that guy. Sure enough,
They gave you a call.
He gave me a
There you
call,
go.
and that was my start. And he'd listen into my conversations like around so the way Value City is over there is set up, it's wall, like row after row after row after row of furniture. And then there's, wall, he'd be listening in on the other side of walls. And then immediately after I got done with those customers, he'd be like, here's what you did right,
That's amazing.
but here's all of the stuff that you did wrong. And so it was
So your first mentor, right at
that
Valley
was
City.
that that was my first mentor, Anthony. His name's Anthony Bowerstock. Shout out to him. So
That's cool.
he set so many things for for the way that my life ended up turning out. And then going into real estate, I just made
Was that
so many more mentors.
first job commission based or was it hourly?
So the first job was draw versus commission. Yeah. So I mean,
Okay.
I did get what was it? Goodness, it was it was, I mean, a certain amount of, I think it was like $12 an hour or something like that. Whatever
Yeah.
it ended up being, it was something, not anything you're going to be living on. And then they'd take that out of your commission check. My first time that I was at Value City, I was absolutely awful. Ended up leaving, going to a bunch of other places. And then that same guy, Anthony, actually called me back and was like, "Hey, I am, I want you to come back and sell again." And then the
He
next,
believed in you.
he
That's
believed in me. Yeah, for
cool.
whatever he ended up seeing, I definitely didn't see in myself at the time because I just, like I said, I was kind of bouncing around and I just really had no solid direction. But he called me
Mhm.
back and was like, "Hey, I want you to come back and sell." And then whenever I came back and sold, I lit it up for whatever it was.
Yeah.
Whatever you took
Possibly
away
just
at the other jobs.
gaining
Well,
the
it was just, yeah, like an amalgamation of just
Yep.
all of this knowledge and watching all of these other people, and hey, maybe next time you say this, say it like this, or next time you say this, or you're trying to get this point across, convey it with this emotion or
Mhm.
with this,
this tone of voice or
this tone of
something.
voice,
Yeah.
this body language. He got me really thinking about like the entire process, and which is why I call it, again, human engineering. I need to work on all of this to figure out exactly how to, I don't want to say manipulate, but to get the desired response
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
So,
So
yeah.
years later, got the
Years later,
license.
got the
right?
license.
Still
Yeah.
working the 9 to 5. Now,
Still working the 9 to 5.
how did you end up choosing your brokerage?
I actually, so I talked to a lot of different brokerages, and actually, whenever I was 18, I went and met with a guy named Jim Spagnolo. He's he's still with Berkshire Hathaway, and I went over to him and was just talking to him like, "Hey, man, I'm 18. I don't know what."
You're just
What to
exploring your
do.
options at
I'm
this
exploring
point.
my option. Exactly. Like, can you kind of give me a breakdown of,
What
what a
this looks
realtor
like.
does?
Yeah.
Exactly. What does the day to day look like? And yeah, I mean, he had really nothing to gain for the most part, but he, every single time I wanted to talk to him, he's like, "Yeah, no," he's like, "I got some time free on this day." He's like,
That's
"You want to
awesome.
talk then?" And
Yeah.
he introduced me to another agent named James Rhodes, who
Oh,
if
he's
you've heard of
great.
the Rhodes Ramsey
Yes,
team, yeah.
yes.
So I've known James for quite a few years. And anytime I had questions, even to this day, I reach out to James and I just for nothing, like we're not doing a deal together or anything, but just to
Pick
reach
his
out and say
brain
what's
and
up.
yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's a great guy. But yeah, I ended up talking to, so whenever I was actually choosing a brokerage, I was having a tough time getting a hold of Jim. I talked to a couple of different places. Actually, I talked to one and they flat out were like, "We don't want anything to do with you."
Yeah.
I was
What?
like,
A brokerage or a team?
"Yeah, a brokerage." Um,
Small
so
brokerage?
yeah, somewhat.
No way. That's crazy.
So they're
Because
not.
normally brokers really,
You can
really
call
want
Yeah.
more
You
agents.
can call them out if you want.
Well, so they're not around anymore. Actually,
Oh, they're not. Okay, then
They're-
name drop.
well, so yeah, I will say they are they were they were based out of the Hershey area and ended up, I think, kind of getting if my understanding is correct, they kind of got absorbed by a much bigger,
Okay.
more well-known brokerage. But they basically told me that because I had a full-time job, they're like,
Mm,
yeah, so if you're looking to, to be, dual career, what we call dual career, and we don't feel that that's going to represent us properly. We don't want anything to do with that. We don't, we think that
wow.
our clients deserve better.
Sure.
Wow. I mean,
Okay.
I've
I
heard
was like,
that. I've heard that happen before.
I could see where they're
but-
coming from, at least from like a business
Yeah.
client perspective, right?
yeah,
Obviously, they want somebody who's going to be fully committed to their role as an agent and making
Right.
sure that the client has the best service possible.
yeah, which I, and that part I totally understood. The way he said it, I was like,
Oh, yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
not a good way to word it.
soften that just a little bit. Bro.
It does
Like,
make sense if they were smaller. They don't have the resources to properly train a part-time.
Sure, 100%.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I don't necessarily fault them for it. I did think that it was a little ironic that they ended up then going out of business, but I was like,
Well,
I don't know that
well.
it made that much of a difference, man. And people go out of business for all different reasons. So
Right.
not trying to just sit here and talk shit,
Nah,
but
that's okay. So you
yeah,
ended up landing with him.
I ended up actually a lady named Kathy Palmero. I walked in. I didn't want to go to Keller Williams. I don't know why. I just was dead set.
Oh,
I
so
was
you
like,
didn't start at KW either.
I did
Oh.
actually. Yeah, well, yeah.
Lucky.
So,
We're getting there.
right? Well, I didn't want to go to Keller Williams, but I was like, I'd kick myself if I didn't at least try walking in
Yeah,
and saying
yeah.
something. The front desk receptionist, she was director of first impressions was her actual title, but her name was Kathy Palmero. I sat down with her, had so many different questions because I knew what to ask. You know,
Yeah.
I was at least somebody who came in knowing like, you know, so many people don't really even know what to ask. They don't know the right questions.
Yeah.
They don't know. But I was like, I had this whole list of questions. She answered them all. I was like, can you show me
There
your
you go.
numbers? Well, Keller Williams they're like open book.
Transparent,
Like,
yeah.
they'll show you all.
And I love that.
Yeah.
No, I do as well. And
Yeah.
and there were, you know, and not that
They'll show you any agent's numbers. They'll literally show you the whole book,
yeah. I mean, it was
which
so.
is nice. Yeah.
And the crazy thing, like I didn't even with some of these other places that I talked to, they were, you know, lovely people, but I just like we didn't even get there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Kathy answered all my questions, and then I was like, there was a guy named Nathan Knight who was like more or less like in charge of like operations there, and she's like, hey, can you show him the books? And he's like, okay. I was like,
Wow.
I didn't even know how to read the books. Like I didn't know like
You're just
what
looking
the
at it
numbers were.
He's like, all right, looks good.
But I was just like, oh,
Interesting.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, that
Cool.
But you could have done
Everything-
better here.
Just like the fact that they're willing to
Yeah,
show that. Though,
everything
is-
checks out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was still kind of on the fence between KW and another brokerage. I decided to, well, I guess I can say it. So I was on the fence between KW and
Yeah, I was
Iron
gonna
Valley.
say, share the. Okay.
Yeah. And I was like, you know, I'm like, I feels like a big decision, honey. I'm not sure what to do. She's like, well, just like hear them out, feel them out. And we had actually gotten invited to like this. So it was before I even technically got my license. I was like, hey, I got to go test for it. They invited me over to a pool party over at the guy who was then the broker of record, Kevin Anderson.
Yeah.
They invited me over to a pool party that was over at his house. And that was cool. And I talked to Kathy. I talked to another seller agent who, you know, gave me, you know, more time of day than she probably needed to, named Ashley Lindsay. And just kind of talking to them, like I got to know them a little bit. And whenever you have like real conversations with people and you start realizing like, wow, this, you know, this person, and they start talking to you and you're talking just about life and you start realizing like, man, this person gives a shit about me.
Yeah.
You know, and like that starts to change you a little bit. And there's so few people in the world who will ultimately really give a shit what happens to you. And am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Dude,
Yeah,
totally.
you are. Skyler
Yeah.
does. So.
Yeah, I was gonna
You
say,
should-
yeah, I'm like,
We can
Skylar
use
does.
him as the example.
Thanks, guys.
But you know, there's so few people, you know, that whenever you find the people who do care, like you hold on to it. You
Yeah.
know, I'm a very, very loyal guy. You really gotta like break my trust in order for me to like just not want anything to do with you.
No, totally.
And so yeah, I got that feeling from KW, started doing that. And it really went nowhere for months and months. I helped my mom get a house. I helped my stepdad get an apartment.
Sure.
Helped another lady get an apartment. So I was driving. So with my full-time job, I was in like territory sales.
Yeah.
So, and at the time, my territory went all the way up to Union County. So I had half of Cumberland and then all of Perry, Juniata, Snyder, and Union.
Ooh.
So I would go up to Union County, and then I'd have to go out to like Chambersburg to help her look for places. And then I was helping to cover another guy's territory, so I'd go out to Lebanon.
Yeah.
And I'd be out there for most of the day, and then
That's a
I'm
lot.
driving all the way back to Chambersburg to then drive back to Hummelstown,
Mm-hmm.
where I live. You know, I a lot of these sales jobs, you know, it's definitely a very, very different atmosphere from what I would imagine any brokerage, but obviously, you know, especially KW provides. And I can't even say KW because honestly, I got to shout out like the actual brokerage. So Keller Williams of Central PA, because I guarantee not every KW is like that.
Yeah.
The whole leadership team is just, they all care a lot.
Yeah,
and you can tell that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. You know, like, so Ben, Brittany, Kevin Anderson, Kathy Palmero,
Good
trying to
people.
think. Nathan Knight, a buddy of mine who was actually in my practice classes with Rick Zalick, Gary Gaston. There were a bunch of people from the brokerage who actually ended up coming out to my wedding.
Oh wow!
And that was that was a wedding that I couldn't have given my wife had I not gotten into the business. I couldn't have given her.
Estate. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she grew up, I guess, without getting too into it, just in very, very less than favorable circumstances, to put it mildly.
Sure.
And I was like, man, like, just give her I'm praying. I'm like, just give her one good day. Like, let me give her one good day.
Yeah.
And I feel like we had a beautiful wedding. Like, a lot of the things going on behind the scenes, and like I knew all of the things that went wrong.
You knew the stressful parts.
Yeah, I'm like, but I feel like at least to a lot of other people, I'm like, I hope it actually looked,
as long as it looked good to her.
Yeah.
As long as it looked good to her, it was my main focus.
That's awesome. How long ago have you been married now?
So we got married November of 22.
Okay, couple years.
Yeah, for months whenever I started, I just couldn't get anything going. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't putting in the work, but
right. I want to dive into kind of like the tactical steps that you started taking once you got that license, because I know trying to balance both of those is a lot to handle, right?
Yeah.
So what was kind of like your initial lead gen, I guess you would say, when getting your license?
There was none. I let people know that I was
just referrals.
It was, and that's
just talking to people.
Yeah.
Word of mouth.
Yeah.
And that's
trying
where
to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of so I knew that you had to go into the brokerage. To like going into the brokerage was going to be important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because you just, whenever you go into the brokerage, you start getting opportunities that you
and even listening to people on the phone and like being in that environment.
People.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it does make a difference.
When you did join, did they have a PC program or any sort of coaching? Like back in what, 2021?
21, yeah. So they technically did, but it was at that point, it was kind of in shambles, and they were trying to kind of do, they were trying to kind of, rebuild it, kind of like actually like put out, I think more of like a syllabus sort of thing. And, hey, here's
just something more organized.
Yeah, something more organized.
Yeah.
The guy who was running it, I believe, was much more of like a commercial agent.
Mm-hmm.
Like very, very, to my understanding, an extremely competent agent, but that like he was kind of coming from a little bit of a different world to
tricky to train new agents on how to lead gen. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, it was just a different, a different mindset.
It's a whole different business.
It was a whole different business. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, residential and commercial, like they're not
two different worlds.
Compared.
And and so whenever I, they tried to talk me into joining the PC program whenever I first started.
Because they have a like dual career section of that.
They do now, so they didn't then.
Oh, bummer. That's why I asked. Because I think that's so cool. Because they meet at night, so it's like all the people trying to balance the 9 to 5 in real estate. So
yeah, well, for sure. And so the team leader at the time, Anthony Lynham, who ended up, talking about mentors, ended up becoming a big mentor.
Anthony was the team leader.
Anthony Lynham was the team leader.
I did not know that before Brittany.
Yeah, so Brittany was actually the tech trainer. And Anthony, was just talking her up like in meetings and stuff. He's like, just like, man, some of her ideas are just, he's like, she's kind of taking this, going off with this stuff. He's like, this is outstanding. And I think whenever he was kind of stepping down, he even said something along the lines of, he's like, man, in some of these meetings, he's like, she's just shining so bright. He's like, how can you not give her, put her in a position like this?
That's cool.
Right.
Yeah. So it was cool to see.
That was awesome. So how long did it take you to close your first deal? Not family related.
Ooh,
Not family related. So
I always love to hear that.
So it was my first. I mean, it was my first rental. And that was like 6 months after I got. But to actually like do a deal that wasn't family and to actually like close on a house.
Yeah.
I wasn't really doing anything, and so I ended up getting a lead actually from Ashley Lindsay. She gave me a referral for a guy, super awesome guy. Actually, right now I'm trying to help him out with some stuff here currently. But he's so he was a vet. He was actually living in a hotel with it was him and his young son, sweetest people you could ever meet.
Yeah.
Honestly, he just needed somebody to give him a hand.
Mm-hmm.
So we
So
went
you're
around to a couple of different places,
yeah.
tried to take a look at a couple of different spots for him, and just nothing. Like, honestly, even some of the places we were looking at, I'm like, I don't even feel right, like,
Showing you this property.
like putting him into
Mhm.
a place like
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
Definitely some of the places like probably like C4, C5 at least. And
Were these city properties?
uh, uh, probably 2 or 3, I would say,
Okay.
were city properties. We ended up actually getting him into a place in High Spire. I was working with First Choice Home Buyers, and they had actually had a place that they were, completely renovating. And
Oh,
I was
wow.
like,
So
"Hey,
was
do
your
you have
first
a?"
deal off market?
Yeah. Well, no, actually, you know what? I think it was. I think they had like just technically. No,
Listed
you
it.
know what? I think it was off market.
That's
Yeah, so
cool.
my first deal was off market. Now that I'm
That's
thinking
really
about it,
cool,
I'm like,
actually.
There you go.
Not many agents can say that.
Yeah, well, it was so that was cool. And then the way that I really started getting business, really from there. So I'd taken an old list. So that PC program, they were being given lists by, I think it was by First Choice Home Buyers, and they were being, given these lists of, just, hey, here's some people who reached out to us, but some of these lists were, maybe we couldn't get a hold of them. Some of these lists were like ancient.
Years old,
Mhm.
yeah.
And I had asked Anthony, I was like, hey, do you mind if I call? Like, because I don't have anywhere else, and I'm like, I got this wedding coming up. I'm freaking out. I'm like, I don't,
I need
Need to
some-
close a
right
deal,
now,
give
I need
me
to
the
close
list.
some
money.
deals, man.
Yeah.
And
Need to pay for the wedding.
and he's like, sure. And so he gave me just, like
That's
one,
cool.
like a sheet of paper, list of names, and was like, call some of those people. And I don't know if he really believed that I was going to get anybody. I don't know that I really believed that I was going to get anybody, but
Don't know if you don't try.
exactly. So I ended up making some calls. Sure enough, I talked to a guy, and he's like, yeah, go ahead, come down and take a look at my house. Tell me what you think it's worth. I was like, okay.
Dang.
And I didn't know what to do.
From one list.
From one list. And these people were ancient, like from forever ago that they had submitted.
Mhm.
And I went down there, got him to sign the paperwork, called Anthony in like a mad panic. I'm like,
First listing.
Anthony, I don't know
What
to
do I
do.
do?
I don't know what to do. I'm like, but he signed some paperwork. I didn't necessarily even know like all of the paperwork to like
Oh.
have him sign.
My gosh.
And Anthony's like, you got somebody from that list.
He was probably like,
oh
what?
yeah, he was like, really? It's like,
He didn't
yeah,
believe
man.
it.
Oh, wow. I totally believed in you.
And he's like, all right. He's like, well, let's talk. And he kind of walked me through some of that stuff. And then a couple months later, he ended up, kind of telling me, he's like, well, hey, you were actually making calls. Do you want to work with us? So I wasn't like on as like in an official capacity, but I was like an agent partner.
So did you just like make calls for them, or what did that look like?
So they actually ended up making calls, and they basically were saying, hey, go out, make this person a cash offer. And if they don't have any kind of interest in it, I was like, can I list it? They're like, yeah, and we'll take a portion of the commission. And I was like, sweet.
That's awesome.
And so I think that year, it was my first full year in real estate. I think I ended up doing like, I think it was between like 18, 20, 22. Like it was somewhere in the ballpark of 20 deals.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And
That's
it was
phenomenal.
and it was on the side.
First
of my,
year,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
And
crazy
going from like
numbers.
nothing for 6 months except
Yeah,
a rental,
yeah.
and then going and jumping that far ahead. That's
Yeah, I mean,
impressive.
and probably half of those were from, from working with First Choice.
Yeah.
And so
Out of that 18 to 20, how many did you list versus like cash deals that they're?
I was so bad at making the cash offers.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, so here's what this is. People were like,
Anthony,
no.
don't listen.
Yeah, exactly. Turn this off. But I was so bad at making the cash offers, and Anthony, like, God bless him, he was trying to help me
Trying to
not
coach
be
you up.
awful at this.
Oh.
And but I was like, well, if you want, I'm like, here's what I think you'd probably actually be able to sell it. Like, if I sold it, here's what I think I could sell it for.
Mhm.
We're like, okay.
Rather go that
And-
route, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'll be back with paperwork.
Yeah.
And so then you come back and you're like, shit, okay, this is working. This is starting to work. And that's really all it was. I don't think I got a single person to
To agree
like,
to a cash.
agree to a cash
You're
deal.
kidding.
And there was one guy who was like giving it some thought, and he's like,
That's funny.
okay. And he actually came in and we started talking. I don't think he ended up ever doing anything, but yeah, no, I was not good at it. But what I was really, really good at, and that they started letting me do, was if you want to list it, go ahead. We'll take a portion of the commit, And I was like, and I was happy to do it because I was like, you guys are making the calls for me. It was like, and they let me
giving them
brand
the
myself.
leads. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's
That's a good deal.
So it was your sign and everything. Your listing.
No, it was.
Oh,
It was.
wow.
I mean, for me, there were some more senior agents who, who, they didn't necessarily need that business the same way that I did. But for me and for a guy who was starting, I mean, it was an outstanding opportunity, and it came because
sure.
I was the dude who was willing to call these
if you
old
don't got
leads, and I had a level of success with it, and so
20 deals year one is
it
crazy.
was in that ballpark. I mean,
That's cool.
it was at least like 18. It might have been like 21, 22. Honestly, whenever I had first started all of this, I was awful at tracking my numbers, and I think I make the excuse that part of it was just, well, I had so much other stuff going on with work that I couldn't really think about it.
So important.
In reality, I was just being such a bad business owner at the time.
Well, you learned.
But yeah, you learn quick. And so no, it was an awesome opportunity. The year, and at least half of those deals, I'd say probably at least half of those deals came from First Choice.
Nice. Do you still work with them to this day? Kind of doing the same thing? Or?
No, not so much. Like if he had ever called me and was like, hey man, for whatever reason, like our guys, they can't go, out to this place, or, people are busy, whatever it ended up being. If he were to call me,
but he doesn't want you making the cash deals.
Yeah, I mean,
cash offers.
He kept losing money.
If I were him, I wouldn't want me making the cash offers.
That's so funny.
I'm not good at that whole, the wholesaling aspect of all that stuff. But
something I'm
you
curious.
tried. I mean,
I tried.
I've never done that.
Honestly, I was more comfortable with the listing process.
Yeah,
so I was less comfortable with the cash stuff because I didn't understand it as well. So I will say, to a degree, I think I naturally leaned into I almost used it as like a safety net. Like I was so bad at this, but I knew this
but
part.
Now
I
this
knew the listing part, and this sounds great now. So so that it definitely helped. And my conversion rate with them for the stuff that they gave me was really solid.
Yeah. So curiosity of mine, because I'm only used to making cash offers. The only time I'll ever make an offer of doing any kind of listing is for an ovation, right?
Mm-hmm.
What differentiates the two? I mean, I know obviously for a cash offer, I have my spiel. Like, if you were to list it and after realtor commissions, after closing costs, after having to get this fixed, it's not going to pass inspection. Like, you probably won't appraise for that, blah, blah, blah. Like, I can give all these negotiation tactics for why it wouldn't be good to list. What does it look like on the contrary? Because I don't know that side. So, like,
sell your house for more.
It's just I think 99% of the time, listing it on market, no matter the condition, it's going to make the seller more money.
It's going to make
unless they're embarrassed about the condition, or they have a hoarding situation, or
if they're on some kind of time crunch.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's some circumstances where wholesaling does make sense for the seller, but
no, I mean, honestly, the offers and stuff that First Choice was making to people. Like I heard other offers that like other people were making. I was like, First Choice is making these like way better offers.
Really?
And they can close like, hey, well, we'll close in your timeline. When do you need to close? Obviously within reason, I'm sure. But no, I mean they had a pretty sweet setup going. I'm sure that they still do. I know less about what they're doing here now, but
sure. Yeah, they're doing a lot
I still
of deals.
see them killing it. Yeah,
a lot of deals.
So I'm sure they're fine.
They send me their list every week.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And they have, but I love a lot of the guys that they have working for them. Ended up meeting a lot of those guys, was trying to pick their brains.
Sure.
Anywhere you go over there, there's somebody who can teach you something. It's really anywhere. Yeah. You can always learn something.
You knock on any door in our office, and
everyone's
willing to help.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's just, are you willing to actually ask for it?
Right.
A lot of the time.
And take action on what they teach you.
And take action on what they teach you. Are you able to put your ego to the side for a moment and realize that there's still things that you have to learn, no matter how successful you are?
Yeah.
You'll learn something from anybody.
So now kind of jumping ahead, right? That was when you had, what do you call it? Dual
agency?
No, not dual agency.
I was dual career.
Dual career.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like dual occupation. No,
Dual occupation, yeah.
something, right? Anyways, so now that you have actually transitioned into being a full-time agent, do you notice that it's less stressful? You have more time to really focus on being an agent, or kind of what does the day in life look like?
So the tough thing, and I had a lot of flexibility with my, with my job that I've had ever since I became an agent.
Right.
But there was always a level of like, well, I can't make this training because, and my schedule was very, while I had flexibility, if I had a meeting or I had an
No,
appointment,
you
I
had to be
had to
there.
be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously while I was on the clock, working for that employer, obviously I'm not, I'm
You're
not
not
going to
able to.
disrespect them by also doing then this, all of this other
This little
stuff.
side meeting over
Right,
here.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, I think, the most I typically would ever really do is like if I'm on the road from, from one meeting to another, working with a transaction coordinator helps out a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And most of my business was listings. And so, or typically if I was working with a buyer, most of the time it was somebody that I knew.
Yeah.
And I told my buyers, I'm like,
They
hey,
can be
listen,
flex with your schedule.
exactly.
Yeah.
And they knew, they understood. I always told my buyers, I'm like, hey, just so you know, I do have a full-time job, but I promise you're
I'll give you
In good
going to
hands.
get incredible service. Like no matter what, I got you. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they trusted me.
Yeah.
And
I can say firsthand, he is actually my current agent. I've been shopping around for my house hack for a little while, and we submitted this offer a little while
Oh,
ago.
the 3-unit. Oh, cool.
Yeah. So
Cool.
should have an answer tomorrow.
hopefully here and tomorrow. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, fingers crossed.
Sounds like I get the feeling that we're going to get good news. So
Yeah.
that's
Right.
that's
So
the vibe.
that's a little bit of a whole new world, though. Creative financing, right? That's not something you were familiar with.
That's not something I had ever really done. But and that's the thing with every single deal. Like
You learn something new.
something.
Yeah.
You're gonna learn something new. I didn't know anything about that. I've written on land. I've helped people buy land. I didn't know jack about land. So
Yeah.
naturally, I started blowing up Matt Madden's phone.
He's the freaking best.
Oh, he's the man.
When it comes to land.
Especially whenever if Matt watches this, Matt is the man no matter what. But no, Matt's a good dude. But it's like
We're trying to get him
especially
on here.
land.
I know.
Oh, that'd be an interesting podcast because
I know.
I'm sure the stuff that he could probably tell you just
It's
blow your
mind blowing.
mind. Yeah.
Even at our wealth thing today. I was
no,
like,
yeah. I mean, it's just to like
I walk around like mind blown after
the
we
level
talk
at
to
which
him.
he knows the business just in general, like the depth that he has is it's next level. And talking to Matt sometimes is, don't get me wrong, like you're always glad whenever Matt's like willing and able to give you a little bit of time, but he'll try and have you like get to the answer of your question by yourself, so he'll lead you there
And he'll just nod his head.
That's what a good.
just like the most frustrating thing, because sometimes you're just like, Matt,
It is.
tell me the answer.
But that's what a good teacher does.
That's what a
Yeah.
good teacher does. And
Yeah.
so while there's some times where I'm just like steam coming out of my ears, and I'm like, Matt, I don't know.
Please just tell me.
Just tell me. Please
Yeah.
just tell me the answer.
Tell.
Honestly, I think I learned better by him doing it the way that he does it versus him just telling me.
Of course,
have a-
because that's not learning at that point.
Exactly.
That's just getting the answer. Right.
100%.
Yeah, no, completely.
Yeah. And so,
So
but yeah, making the transition has definitely been, I get way more, it's been weird so far. So I've been full-time here for now a month.
yeah, so it's very recent, so I'm sure the transition period is still like taking place as we speak. Where it's,
Yeah. I mean,
we're
business,
trying to figure out what it's like now.
yeah, business so far is actually going really, really well. Starting off the year, like we're on track for some healthy numbers.
There you go.
That's
awesome.
If this is able to sustain, if we're able to
Yeah.
keep this going, like Capper is like
Yeah. Does it
that's in the rear view.
does it make you nervous not to have the guaranteed income?
100%.
Yeah. That'll make you work harder though. So
Yeah.
putting yourself being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You gotta grind.
I mean, not everybody, I think feels that way. But whenever you're, especially when I feel like whenever you're the sole breadwinner of your household too,
Yeah.
like when things are on you and it's on your shoulders, Like, you figure out a way to make it work. Like, whenever I was an 18-year-old, there were days where there were nights I was spending in the car, and it was off of my, my own stupidity. And again, without going into a lot of that stuff, but I told the that Anthony Bowersox guy I was telling you about. He was like, why do you want to make money? He's like, if you don't have a reason why you want to succeed at this,
what is your
and
why?
I was like, there's no other option. I'm like, I can either make money or I can starve. I'm like, it's not, I don't have another option. Yeah. This is it. Yeah. I'm like, here's what I got. Yep. Can you work with me? Like, can you mold me?
Yeah.
And despite my giving him every reason probably not to, and just being a complete pain in his ass, he did. And so
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's good to be vulnerable sometimes. So it makes you feel weak at the time, and humbled for sure.
I still feel like, there's still days where I get nauseous just at the thought of like, hey man, but that's the thing too. I've always been on commission for the most part. Like, I've always been on commission.
True.
Now you're getting those, the leads in the business and stuff, and you have like this, you have this name behind you, but it's different.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think about that. So you've always been like crazy high months and low months. So you're used to.
But at the same time,
for the most part, it's always, it's just like after I hit a certain point and things started to click, it's always been like pretty decently
consistent
high months. Yeah. And like I've never, I would say once I went back to Value City, especially the second time, I'd never have been anything but very successful in sales.
Yeah.
Thankfully, again, whatever it was that clicked, but something did. And so now kind of working for myself.
It might just be gaining that confidence over time.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's confidence, and which is something that, I still struggle with,
of course.
When we all do, right? We all have something that we're self-conscious about.
Yeah.
But there's definitely days where, it was especially whenever I was dual career, but there's still days where, I almost have like imposter syndrome. Like, you see these super successful agents and stuff, and they know so many things, and like, you don't even like want to, like, you almost don't even want to ask the question for fear of looking stupid, but you're like, I know I have to ask the question if I want to get better.
Yeah.
Like, there were so many different things in that wealth meeting that we were in today that I'm like, I wanted to ask. I'm like, I don't even know what
that humbled me because it was very over my head. So I'm on the same page.
Well, so I didn't ask questions, but I was back in the back of the room Googling everything as to like, what does this mean? I don't even know what this means.
Did you fill out that wealth paper he gave us?
I did.
I was literally like,
that's a lot. I
was no's to everything.
Yeah, I'm probably going to be no for most of it for sure. So we got this more or less like this questionnaire for,
sure.
How
knowledgeable we are in certain topics.
Wealth, like
it was like insurance, real estate, like all these different topics, and I was just like,
oh my god. Well, I started reading through a lot of it, and I was like,
yeah. But they were like advanced, very hyper specific.
Do you guys have this paper?
I do
in my purse.
I'd love to take a look at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll show
you. Yeah, we'll have to. But I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Trying to kind of sort this out. And being.
It's good that you have a good environment around you, and like, especially
I do. There's days that I absolutely hate being in the office, that I then like force myself to walk around and talk to people, and it's not anything against the other people.
Maddie slams the door in your face.
I believe that she would.
I would not.
But it's coming. Hold on, I'll say something that's gonna get you. But no, I just there's days where we're all just trying to fake it till we make it.
Yeah.
There's days that are obviously, like with anything, that are better than others, but the training, like the stupid amount of training that we have access to, it's disgusting. Like there's I don't know what other. If
we
word
went to all the trainings, we would never get anywhere.
We would never get anything done.
Yeah.
and then they have just this entire library of training, and then of course all of the questions and people that you can ask stuff.
Yeah. Is any of the training mandatory, or is it all just?
No,
No,
none of
I
it
mean,
is.
you have some mandatory trainings as a realtor, but it's not from Keller Williams.
Yeah,
It's just
like
from
continuing education
yeah,
Right,
stuff.
of
like to keep
course.
your license, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But
Yeah.
other than that,
So it's
no.
like if you're not successful at the end of the day, it's really your fault because they have all the
There's
accessibility
so
to it,
much. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I mean,
And
if there's something that you don't know, it's
you have the
just because you
resources there
haven't
to go
And if
figure
you
it out.
follow their plan, like you sit down with Brittany, she'll map it out for you. And if you follow what she does to a T, like
Yeah, you can't
there's
help but
no
win.
way you're not going to be successful. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a good place.
I'm somebody who I buck the system needlessly a lot, and I like it's a very like toxic habit of mine
Yeah.
to just like like Brittany will tell me that like, hey, you should do this and this and this, and I'm like,
I'm gonna do it this way.
but what if no?
Yeah.
And
You're one of
yeah,
those.
she she's patient with me.
It's always good to test though, right?
Well, so I think for me it's just because like I'm like I have so many questions and so many ideas and like what if this did what if this happened or what if this and I think even some of that stuff that then they go over with you and the plan that they go over with you and it's almost like am I confident enough that I can do this?
Mhm.
And it goes back to the same kind of lack of confidence just going into this full time and it's just okay, well I guess we're burning the boats so like here we are now and it's
It's either eat or starve, right?
it's eat or starve. It's either you're
Nice.
successful at this or nothing.
Yeah.
Because now I got I have people who rely on me.
You got no
Yeah.
excuses.
I have
Yeah.
responsibility. I don't
Yeah.
have kids, but and it's actually something I was talking to Ben about here just a little bit ago. It's just kind of you have to jump in at some point. Whether that's you doing it or if that decision is made for you, like you have to go with it. You got to roll with it.
Yeah.
Because you don't have any choice.
Yeah.
You still gotta be an adult. Still gotta still
Put your big boy
gotta
pants
take
on.
care handle your shit exactly. And so it's but we're gonna make some awesome things happen.
Cool.
For sure.
I appreciate you coming on today. It's been a
Absolutely.
pleasure. I love hearing your story. Really understanding
doubt.
like where you
Yeah,
came
you're
from.
killing
and
it. I'm
yeah.
excited. I'm
Thank you,
excited to
guys.
see what you do in
Do you-
2025.
Do you have any big goals for this year?
So I wanted to get 33 deals done
33.
this year. Yeah,
Okay.
just as a
No freaking way. That's my goal
Yeah,
too.
is it?
33, exact number. Yeah,
wow.
that's cool.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So to try and replace kind of where I was at, being dual career, it's I think that's
It's kinda
kind
like
of
the
what
number
can
you
help
need to
get
be
us.
at.
Yeah, based off of just average. So average commission average GCI used to be in this area. I think it was like 5,000. I think it's probably closer to like 7 now at this point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like 2 and like even just
Wait, I know
Ye-
this. Every $250,000 equals a $5,000 commission. So now the average house of a price has gone up
Yeah.
probably like 325, 350 around here.
Well, so I mean, even if you're selling a house for 280 and you're getting 2.5%, which is kind of like the low. Like typically, you see agents getting 6%, splitting it between the buy side and sell side, right?
Yeah.
Even if you go down a point to 5, just to you're trying. It's not something I like to do, but it's something that
Something you
Sometimes
can.
when the
occasionally you kinda
numbers
do.
make sense.
Yeah, if the numbers make sense, because obviously at the end of the day, you're trying to help somebody get meet their
Their bottom.
financial requirement, right?
bottom
What's your
line,
bottom
yeah.
line?
Sure.
And so, but $280,000 at 2.5%, I think is $7,000. So 280,000 in this area is dime a dozen. It's not hard to find. I would say that's
Yeah.
probably a pretty good
Average sales price, I'd
average,
say.
low average, potentially even just
Yeah.
depending on what area specifically. But
Right, of course.
it's 7,000's a number I feel pretty confident in. But yeah, I mean, just even at that, it's something that I think it's definitely going to take some stretching, and it's definitely going to take obviously it's going to take a tremendous amount of work. But
Yeah.
I'm scared, but we're gonna
It's
make
okay.
it happen.
Yeah.
Right?
You can do it.
Eat or starve. So
There you go.
for
Love
sure.
it.
Thank you,
You
sir.
got it.
I appreciate
Cool.
it.
Thank
and
you guys.
if
Thanks
you guys,
for coming on.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Of course.
This is awesome. I'm like, how many times have I watched Investors Unite?
Yeah,
I'm like,
it's so
I get to
cool.
see
now I
it.
get to be on here. I'm like, this is crazy.
Well, thank you for tuning in, and thank you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed Andrew's story and, could take something from it. If you're still in that 9-to-5 rat race, but you also want to be an agent and eventually switch to full-time agency, I hope that you could have gained some knowledge from his experiences.
Need a therapy session on it? You give me a call.
Or come sit down at the podcast
Come sit
table.
down on the podcast on Investors Unite.
We've had so many people cry at this table. It's ridiculous. I mean, I love it all. I mean, just knowing that we can get that deep into some conversations, it's amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
But no, truly honored. So I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.
Thanks.